Hello, and welcome to our first online lecture, recorded online lecture. Now, just as a preface, the way I do these is as if I were teaching you. In fact, I'm standing as I teach it, so just as if I was doing it in a classroom aspect. So there may be times when I backtrack or have to go through things. This is not a perfect recording, okay? Just as if I were discussing it with you in a class scenario. So today we're going to talk about customer perceptions in the first section of this lecture, and we've discussed previously expectations. But as you know, in terms of the gap, we're looking at the difference between expectations and perceptions. So let's talk a little bit about customer perceptions. Okay, let's first define service quality in terms of what we're looking at from a perception standpoint. Service quality is the totality of features and characteristics of a product or service that bear on its ability to satisfy stated implied needs. So its ability to deliver. What is it that you're getting both the tangible and the intangible portion, if you will, of the service aspect? How are you evaluating it once you're partaking of it? That's essentially what we're talking about here. So the service quality is customer's judgment. Key point. It's the customer's judgment, not yours. It's the customer's judgment. And it's based on the assessments of the outcome, in other words, what happened, and the process, okay, how the process went to get there. Because sometimes the outcome may not be exactly what they wanted, but the process of solving the issue to get it there might be part of the issue. And the physical environment quality, which we're going to talk about later when we get in talking about servicescapes and physical evidence at a later point in the semester. So when we talk about service quality, then we have technical quality. Okay, what did it do? How was it performing tangibly? So did the TV, the monitor in the guest room work correctly the way it was supposed to? Did the key work in terms of its operation? What are we talking about there? In terms of a restaurant, it could be the food quality that we're talking about, the actual item that you're eating. And then the second part of it is the functional aspect, and that's how it works. So that's based on your attitudes, appearance, behavior, the people, if you will. You know, it's the interaction with the people that we're talking about here. That's the functional quality as opposed to the physical. So when we go back and look at the assessment of things, we already have discussed the expected service, word of mouth, personal needs, past experience, external communications. Now we're talking about the perceived service, and then ultimately the perceived service quality. So we're going to be talking about the 5 dimensions: tangibility, reliability, responsiveness, assurance, and empathy. Those are the key measurement aspects, or dimensions, if you will, of service quality. So reliability, assurance, tangibles, empathy, and responsiveness, also known as RATER, R-A-T-E-R. Okay, that's a simple way to remember it, with reliability being the first and responsiveness being the last. So let's go through and talk about those a little bit more specifically. Reliability, the ability to perform the promised service dependably and accurately. It's considered by most the most significant of the 5 dimensions, but that's a question that you may be asking yourselves and that your discussion leadership group may very well want to explore further. Promises, okay, how did it deal on the promises? Personal, organizational, common expectations. You know, but both sides have the same expectation in terms of the timing of the delivery of the service or whatever it was in the process of it. Was it personalized enough? Did it show that what you were looking for you could count on in terms of what you expected to have? That's reliability. Assurance is the second one. Assurance is the 3 C's. Okay? Assurance is the 3 C's. Competence. Okay, the competence, the required skills of those performing the service. In other words, the service personnel of the organization providing you the service. How competent were they in their job? Did they have the product and company knowledge that they needed? The courtesy, again, related to the employee in this case, their politeness, respect, consideration, and ultimately, finally, the 3rd C, credibility, their trustworthiness, believability, honesty. You know, did they give you an answer to a particular service a problem you might have had? Did they give you the right amount of wait time for what it was expected in the restaurant? Whatever it might be, the credibility and trustworthiness of the people. That's the assurance dimension. Another factor in assurance dimension is the reassurance factor. Okay, the reassurance factor is product knowledge, company knowledge, listening skills, problem-solving skills. All things that we need to train and teach employees. And we'll get more into that when we get into Gap 3, but we're talking about here the measurement of it. Those are the things that you need to be reassured on when something doesn't necessarily go the way it is supposed to. Tangibles is the third. The appearance, the physical facilities, the equipment and so on, and that's before, during, and after. And we've talked a little bit about tangibles at this stage of the game. I think you should have a pretty good handle on what we're talking about here. You know, this is the bricks and mortar, if you will, of a hotel. It's the restaurant facilities itself that we're dealing with here. That's the tangibles. The fourth is empathy. Now, empathy is caring, individualized attention to the customer. Okay, it's your accessibility, your ability to communicate effectively with that person, even if their language may not be your languages. They may be speaking English as a second language. In my case, for example, understanding the customer and perceiving things from their point of view. Now, there's a big difference here between empathy and sympathy. Sympathy is, I agree with you and I feel the same way and I would do the same thing if I were in your case. That's sympathy. But you're an employee of that organization, so you may not feel that way. In fact, you might feel that their concern is unwarranted in the process. But you have to have empathy for them. In other words, you have to show them that you care what they think and perhaps explain why that may not be the case or why it might not be the situation as is perceived. You have to have some empathy for their position. So it's not a right or wrong, it's an empathy situation. And then finally, responsiveness, their willingness to help you prompt service, find out what the customer really needs when they want it. Customer waits, again, something we'll talk a lot more about later on, is how long we expect to wait for things is a part of responsiveness. So if something doesn't arrive when we're expecting it to be, that's a responsiveness issue. So to summarize them, reliability is providing the service promised, dependability, the performance of the service right the first time, providing the services that are promised, maintaining error-free records, all those kind of things are reliability. Responsiveness then is the area of informed when the services are performed, the customers are informed when the services are performed, prompt service, willingness to help customers, readiness and responsiveness to requests. Those are the kind of things we're looking at in responsiveness. Assurance, okay, that's the trust factor, okay, making the customers feel safe in their transactions and being courteous and the knowledge of what you are delivering and the knowledge of the product you're delivering and so on. And then empathy, of course, again, we go back to saying this is understanding the customer from the customer's perspective. And the tangibles, then, something that as a person issue, the first four up there are really people issues, whereas the tangibles is more of the physical aspect, if you will. So an easy way to remember this in the Rater scale is when you deliver the customer's order on time, you show reliability. When you smile and tell the customer, I can help you with that, and you can do, then you're building customer assurance. And by the way, you're going to hear that clock in the background once in a while as well. I apologize for that, but that's my little alarm clock, if you will. And when you make the customer or make yourself and your work area more presentable, you're paying attention to tangibles. When you're sensitive to the individual's customer need when solving a problem, that's showing empathy. And when you notice a customer puzzling over a decision, then you respond to it, that's responsiveness. Now I'll give you another kind of view of that, and this is an airline you may or may not be familiar with in the U.S., Southwest Airlines. They're well known for their point-to-point their service. They are a low-cost carrier to a great extent. That's how they got started and how they dealt with, and they're very people-oriented, and that's how they've been rated over the years. So here's a little bit of a take on that in terms of what this would be related to the airline. So reliability. Southwest record of reliability is undisputed. Their on-time aspect is one of the best. They've received all kinds of ratings and so on with regards to that. That's a very important aspect of showing reliability. Responsiveness. They cross-train their employees, and that includes the pilots. The pilots learn how to load bags. The pilots learn all other aspects of the operation. So they're then turning around the aircraft very quickly is one of their key elements in terms of responsiveness. In fact, I can remember back many years ago being at Burbank Airport outside of Los Angeles, where the flight came in late and a full plane got off and we got on as a full plane, and they did it in, believe it or not, 15 minutes. Now that's the kind of responsiveness that you don't see from major carriers around the world. Empathy is about Southwest treats its employees and customers as individuals, encourages them to have fun in a variety of ways. If you're at all familiar with Southwest, you know that they do all kinds of funny things with regards to how they give the announcements. They've been known to hide around corners. They play games with kids. They do all kinds of different things like that. That's a little different in today's world than maybe when they first started, but they're still doing that, showing empathy, particularly when there might be some hesitation about flying from the customer, for example. And assurance is about their trusted reputation about being on time. Not being on time, but the quality level that they give. Being on time would be reliability. That's their reputation. They're trusted. You know that you're going to get what you pay for. And tangibles then have to do with planes are the same colors. Their flight attendants wear dress casually in the process of things. They have a different feel in terms of how they operate. So that gives you a little idea of how Raider might relate to a particular company along the way. And this comes from your Knock Your Socks Off service book, but the 10 Deadly Sins of Customer Service. You don't want to say, I don't know, I don't care, I can't be bothered, I don't like you, I know it all, you don't know anything, we don't want your kind here, don't come back, I'm right, you're wrong, or hurry up and wait. And now those are not necessarily verbalized, but in your way that you deliver the service and in your body language and how you say things. Those are things that you don't want to do. Now these are the discussion questions that I will leave for all of you to review, and you should all be prepared to discuss them. But your first group 1.1 in this case, will start by discussing these and involving you in conversation. And remember, for all of you, for future reference, you're going to each have the same situation where you have to do discussion questions and you have to get response from your class, and your class response is going to be part of what you're graded on. So you want to make sure that you do a good job with that. So that ends our first lecture, and I will cut it off here.